Great. So it's my great honor to welcome you for the fourth session, which is the concluding session of the first day. It's a very important topic to which Commissioner Skinas Adi made a wonderful and eloquent introduction. I have the great honor to have an amazing panel to address a very timely topic of fighting digital violence and protecting youth. And to address this, let me invite Madam Minister, Charlotte Caubel, Secretary of State to the Prime Minister for Child Protection in France. Welcome.
Thank you.
I have on my left Mr. Benoit Tabaka, Director of Government Affairs and Public Policy at Google in France. On my right, again, I have Mr. Louis Victor de Franssu, co-founder of Tremau in France. And last but not least, I have a wonderful speaker, Mrs. Marianne Lindroth, who focuses on cybersecurity awareness, training and education at Cyber Citizen project in Finland. So as you see, we have some of the most distinguished speakers today with us. And we'll be also taking questions from the audience. So please have them ready. It would be really great to have more of an interactive discussion with the audience, and I really hope for that. We will, unless I see a lot of urgent demands, feel free to raise your hands if there is urgent question. Because we are very late, we have some 15 to 20 minute delay, I will leave these 15-20 minutes for a question and apologies for this, from the audience, and we see it will be on the demand. Like if you have many questions, let this conversation going on. If not, we'll conclude by the time which was initially set, which is 6 o'clock, and we'll continue with the rest of the program. So I will not make the traditional introduction of the panel because we have a very complex introduction by Commissioner Skinas going through the three types of digital violence, which is particularly touching upon youth people online. We had cyberbullying and connected threats, disinformation, and terrorist content. And as we can all agree, this is our common goal to ensure safety and security online, especially for young people who are very vulnerable to because of their inexperience with the digital contents, but also high reliance on digital tools. And while we can all agree on this, we see policy and technology responses to these challenges which generate a lot of debate and a lot of controversy and concerns. And these are especially around privacy and intrusion, but also in regard to their effectiveness or possible unintended consequences, as it always happens with cyber world, which is connected. So this panel will explore what is needed for the new balance in a new world, and I really like how it connects to the overall theme of Paris Cyber Summit. And it's very timely today, as we will discuss. So we'll dive into policy and technological responses, successful models, but also the perils. And let us get finally started with the opening questions. I would like to set the scene for everyone in the audience to be at the same level of knowledge as we dive into more policy and technological responses. We have discussed what are the overall challenges. I will not run into it, but how have the digital landscape evolved in recent years? What is different about this discussion today than it was some years ago? And what existing and emerging threats are we looking to address today? And especially, we also touched upon it before, what is the gender dimension of this? Because as any cybercrime, this has a lot of impact, especially on women and girls, and they are impacted differently than other groups. So if you can also touch upon this, and we can start in the order as you are introduced. I will start with Madame Minister. Please.
Merci. Merci d'abord pour votre invitation et merci pour le discours très prenant, effectivement, du vice-président de la Commission qui montre comme ce sujet dépasse évidemment nos frontières. C'est un sujet pour moi tout à fait crucial, tant on voit que le droit, la santé, la sécurité des enfants dans la vie réelle est aujourd'hui impactée par tout ce qui se fait sur Internet et sur les réseaux. Et comme tout est mêlé. Vous le savez peut-être, la France a connu encore un drame il y a quelques jours avec le décès d'une jeune collégienne qui était à la fois harcelée physiquement dans son école, mais aussi harcelée numériquement en dehors de l'école. Et non seulement cela a conduit cette jeune fille à mettre fin à sa vie, mais le harcèlement a continué après, comme si les harceleurs n'avaient pas conscience du lien entre le réel et le numérique. Donc c'est dire comme le sujet nous oblige. On a évidemment, et vous l'avez évoqué, monsieur le vice-président, l'ampleur des phénomènes sur le numérique, avec 1 million en France d'enfants harcelés, en tout cas d'élèves qui se disent harcelés, avec 2,3 millions d'enfants qui vont sur la pornographie chaque mois, et des conséquences, pour ne citer que ces 2 chiffres, extrêmement importantes sur leur santé et sur leur équilibre. Alors, j'ai bien entendu ce dont vous parliez comme priorité, à savoir l'accès à des contenus, au premier rang desquels les contenus terroristes et les fake news. Moi, je rajouterais très largement d'autres contenus qui sont inadaptés pour les enfants. On peut bien sûr parler de pornographie, mais on peut aussi parler de toutes les problématiques de sectes qui touchent énormément nos enfants et qui sont contrôlés en général dans nos médias classiques, mais qui ne le sont pas du tout sur le numérique. On a bien sûr des sujets d'utilisation excessive des téléphones, l'un étant d'ailleurs lié à l'autre, cette addiction à certains contenus, et en même temps l'utilisation excessive des écrans. On a toutes les violences que vous avez évoquées, dont sont victimes les enfants et les jeunes par le biais d'Internet, auxquels, et vous y avez fait allusion, monsieur le vice-président, il faut bien sûr ajouter la pédocriminalité en ligne, c'est-à-dire toutes ces images qui sont des faits réels, mais qui passent par les canaux. Et je sais l'engagement de la Commission européenne pour faire avancer ce sujet. On avait déjà un outil important, il nous faut plus, parce que incontestablement, ça donne un sentiment d'impunité, et ça, effectivement, nourrit des fantasmes qui conduisent à des violences physiques. Et puis nous avons 2 autres sujets que vous n'avez pas évoqués, mais qui sont importants pour moi. La protection de l'image des enfants, de l'enfant, et donc sa capacité à protéger son image aussi, la protection de leurs données qui peut aller avec, et plus généralement l'omniprésence du smartphone et du numérique dans la vie des enfants, dans la vie des familles, comme objet très présent, qui est un objet à la fois pratique, qui facilite la vie des enfants et des familles, mais aussi un objet extrêmement conflictuel et qui envahit effectivement toutes les relations et qui sert à certaines relations qui n'a pas réglé ses problèmes avec des SMS plutôt que d'aller directement résoudre le problème en direct. Donc vraiment beaucoup d'enjeux sur la protection des enfants numériques, voilà, et des risques majeurs, on le sait, avec des risques de protection physique, psychologique et de santé. Nous avons plusieurs cibles dans nos travaux et il ne faut jamais oublier dans tout ce qu'on fait l'ensemble des cibles. Les enfants et les jeunes eux-mêmes qu'il nous faut sensibiliser, former sur tous les sujets, y compris les risques en matière de fake news, etc. C'est la cible principale. Ce sont souvent ceux qui sont les meilleurs ambassadeurs pour assurer leur propre protection. Il nous faut sensibiliser l'ensemble des acteurs, et vous l'avez dit, monsieur le vice-président, de l'enfance, les éducateurs, les professeurs, les intervenants autour des enfants, et ça dès le plus jeune âge, qu'ils aient conscience dès le tout premier âge que ces écrans ont envahi la place, enfin la vie de leur famille et la vie de ces enfants. Et bien sûr, les parents, et c'est l'objet d'ailleurs de 2 textes qui sont portés aujourd'hui en France, c'est de non seulement informer, former les parents, mais responsabiliser les parents dans ces phénomènes de violence subis par les enfants. Parfois les enfants aussi auteurs de violences, parce que voilà, il nous faut impérativement que les parents aient conscience et prennent leurs responsabilités. En France, nous cherchons à faire évoluer la notion d'autorité parentale qui découle de la naissance ou du mariage, avec une notion qui comprendrait maintenant une notion de responsabilité numérique. Le numérique doit être un des leviers de l'autorité parentale, doit être conçu dans l'autorité parentale tellement c'est présent. On peut aujourd'hui s'étonner que les parents demandent à des enfants, quand ils sortent par la porte de leur maison, « Où vas-tu ? Qui vas-tu voir ? Que vas-tu faire ? Quand est-ce que tu rentres ?» Ces questions ne sont pas posées aux enfants quand ils vont sur leur smartphone et leur tablette. Or, ces questions sont essentielles parce que les risques sont quasi identiques et parfois pires tellement ils sont insidieux. Donc, il faut que les parents apprennent à poser la question « Que vas-tu faire sur ton smartphone ? Qui vas-tu voir ? Qu'as-tu vu ? Qu'as-tu découvert ?» Positivement d'ailleurs aussi. Qu'as-tu découvert, mais aussi négativement. Voilà. Nous avons, vous l'avez dit, Monsieur le Vice-président, depuis longtemps en France, porté ce combat du numérique dans nos vies. Le président Macron a été porteur dans le précédent quinquennat de tout ce que la Commission a su se saisir, et l'Union européenne aussi, au titre de la régulation sur les contenus terroristes et les contenus de haine en ligne. À nouveau, le président Macron souhaite être moteur sur la protection numérique. Bien sûr, nous allons transposer les 2 textes importants que sont DSA, DMA, et qui comprennent nécessairement un volet pour les enfants, mais nous voulons aller plus loin, et c'est pour cela qu'il a mis en place le laboratoire de la protection numérique le 10 novembre dernier, avec des objectifs très très clairs d'avancer sur les sujets qui concernent les enfants, en mettant en exergue 2 ou 3 thématiques, le grooming en particulier, mais aussi la reconnaissance, l'identification de l'âge des enfants, tant on sait que c'est important pour pouvoir réguler l'accès des enfants à tout type de contenu. D'abord, empêcher l'accès à des contenus interdits. En France, il est interdit que les enfants voient des photos pornographiques avant 18 ans, donc ça doit être une interdiction qui doit être mise en œuvre réellement. Mais aussi, par exemple, si nous souhaitons vraiment, si le texte est adopté, vérifier l'âge des enfants. 13 ans, c'est l'âge où les plateformes acceptent qu'un enfant s'inscrive. Il faut qu'elles vérifient en amont maintenant cet âge, donc il faut qu'elles mettent les moyens. Nous considérons que 15 ans est la majorité numérique et qu'en dessous de 15 ans, l'accord des parents doit être express. Donc tous ces modèles, tous ces mécanismes de protection des enfants, il faut que les plateformes puissent mettre en œuvre de quoi vérifier effectivement l'âge des clients qui viennent sur leur plateforme. Nous avons plusieurs textes, comme je vous l'ai dit, qui poussent à ça, des textes qui responsabilisent les parents, un texte qui fixe la majorité numérique à 15 ans, un texte qui est porté par le ministre du numérique, qui est la transposition des SA-DMA, mais dans lequel nous avons mis des pouvoirs supplémentaires à notre autorité de régulation pour contraindre les plateformes, qu'elles soient les plateformes de pornographie ou les plateformes de manière générale, à se plier à nos exigences de sécurité, au premier rang desquelles les exigences de sécurité pour les enfants. La responsabilité de l'écosystème, elle est importante. Je vous rappelle aussi que dans le précédent quinquennat, nous avons porté un texte qui a été adopté pour la mise en place ab initio d'un contrôle parental sur tous les appareils numériques. Voilà. Nous sommes encore en discussion avec tout l'écosystème pour que ce décret sorte. Enfin, plus exactement, il est au Conseil d'État. Il ne devrait pas tarder à sortir. Mais on voit bien qu'il nous faut donc emmener dans ce combat tout le monde, toute la société, vous l'avez dit, Monsieur le Vice-président, et au premier rang desquels, bien sûr, les acteurs du numérique. Nous ne sommes pas seuls dans ce combat. Vous êtes présents tous ici. Beaucoup d'associations accompagnent les parents. Beaucoup d'associations se mobilisent aux côtés des enfants, à l'école, en dehors de l'école. Tous les ministres qui sont près des enfants ou qui sont près du numérique sont engagés dans ce combat. Et nous avons aujourd'hui un leitmotiv que nous partageons. Vous apprenez à vos enfants à nager, apprenez-les à surfer sur leur tablette, mais ça n'empêche pas que la responsabilité des uns n'exclut pas la responsabilité des autres et qu'il faut impérativement emmener tout le monde avec nous. Voilà, donc la ligne est très claire, nous en avons tous conscience, partout, c'est ce qui fera que nous pourrons construire ensemble un numérique plus sûr pour nos enfants, qui doivent être protégés dans leurs droits et dans leur sécurité, dans leur santé, aussi bien dans la vie réelle que dans la vie virtuelle. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much for the exhaustive response, and thank you so much for, really touching upon many important issues, such as coming from the trend landscape, which we are seeing, to going to all the policy responses to it, and the importance of responsibility of online platforms for digital safety and safe environments, but also how important it is to have multi-stakeholder solutions, and how important is it for the for the digital context to bring people together in initiatives which France is already undergoing in implementation of the regulations. And speaking about the responsibility of the digital ecosystem, I will now move to representative of Google, Mr. Tabaka. Google plays a significant role in shaping the digital landscape. So if you can, tying it to the first question, what is the data of your company saying about the evolving threat landscape in digital violence, which is connected to especially to the vulnerability of youth, but also moving to the policy responses? What are the steps that Google has taken? What are the specific tools, even like technological tools? And importantly, because we touch upon some like parental control mechanism and age verification, etc. And these policies have very important considerations behind them and many limitations, whether technological limitations or also privacy considerations, etc. Can you elaborate upon that, please?
No, thanks a lot. And thanks a lot, Minister Caubel, because for your leadership, for all the work you are doing, and we have like on a regular basis such kind of important discussion in France right in child protection. And it's clear that what you said about like opening a window to the world for each kid and each young people is true, meaning that they could have access to many content, like they can explore like new ways, unlock their creativity, get some new skills, and so on and so on. So a lot of things helping kids, young people to build their future, but at the same time, and it's true, you could have like a lot of misuse of technology. You could have like an exposure of minors to porn, to violence, to very bad content and behavior, and of course to bad actors that could try to exploit kids online. And you're right, meaning that the approach is, I would say, a sort of partnership between governments, between companies and NGOs. And that's more or less our approach, meaning that we cannot do that alone, but we have a large part of responsibility to do and to elaborate some solutions. The solutions are based, I would say, on two key pillars. The first one is product. Clearly, we have to develop product to be sure that when we have a kid with a smartphone, when we have a kid online, he will have, or the kid will have, a tool designed for its own age, meaning that to be sure that, for example, when someone is watching a video on YouTube, he will land on a YouTube Kids platform, which is like a platform designed for young people, and to be sure that he will get this kind of selection of content that fits clearly for the age, and in function of the age, we could have an access to different content. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, and you mentioned that, Mr. Caubel, is parental control. It's very important today to offer some tools to parents to be able to not only like to control what the kids are doing, but also to engage the discussion, to be sure that it could be the tools that will open a discussion at home between the kids, between the family, and to be sure that they can discuss what you said, meaning that what are you doing, what are you watching, who are you meeting with, and so on and so on. And such kind of parental tool would be a way to more or less adjust what the parents will permit or not permit to kids to do online, and that's important stuff. In addition of the tools, we have to develop also policies and enforcement of the policies. You mentioned the DSA. Child protection will be core of the DSA implementation and of course compliance, meaning that platform will have to do a lot. We'll have to remove content. We'll have to act when needed to protect kids from different set of content, from fake news to harassment to hate speech, violence, and so on and so on. And it's clear that to give you like a volume, looking at YouTube, if we look at YouTube during the last quarter of 2022, we removed 6 million channels and more or less 6 million videos from YouTube during 1 quarter, so 3 months. The first reason of removal was child safety, meaning that content that could impact the child safety. The second reason was hate speech. The third reason was violent content. So it's clear that we have to take additional steps in order to protect, to create this kind of safe space also for kids. It could be like on YouTube, as I said. It could be like on search. To give you an example, you mentioned the right point about the right of the kids to control their, I would say, their privacy, their image. For example, we develop many policies on search, and if you are a kid and someone is publishing a picture of you when you are a kid, it could be your parents, it could be like someone doing bad stuff with your image, but you can get an immediate removal of this content. You are just asking and we'll get the content removed from search. And that's part of the kind of policies that a lot of companies should put in place, and we need to move forward in such kind of direction. And the last point, as I said, is partnership with government. Since the several years, we engage in many discussions with the French government to develop code of conduct, to develop initiative, and you mentioned the last one announced by the President Macron with this kind of lab around child protection, where we can develop concrete tools to improve the child protection. We have this kind of long-term partnership with several associations, NGOs, and of course, I can mention e-enfance, and the outline they developed the 3018, which is like, for us, not only an outline, but also is very important because they are trusted flaggers, meaning that if they are alerted by kids that there is a bad content, for example, on YouTube, on search, they have like this kind of priority access to our system, to our moderators, to be sure that we can treat immediately the request they are sending to us, meaning that it's important to create this kind of link between NGOs and platforms to be sure that we can treat the most efficiency with the most efficiency as the several notification. To give you like, we are working with e-enfance in France, with Open, with Génération Numérique. We are funding those associations. I think that we sponsor them around like 6 million euros in France since 2019, and the goal is to train a lot of people. And you said like training is not only training kids, it's also training families. One of the last example was this kind of leaflets that we distributed to more than 1 million families in France to be sure that we are giving some good advices to families to keep people safe online. And the last point, I think we need to act, as you said, not only like on the content, so to limit the exposure of dangerous content to for kids online. We need to act, of course, on offering like tools, products. I think that we need also to act to the last mile, meaning that the people making bad stuff, and specifically, you mentioned the recent case we had in France with like a cyber harassment. We have cyberbullies, people like acting offline, online, meaning that we can remove a lot of content, we can remove comments, we can remove videos and so on and so on. But it's clear that people are still there, and likely they will change from a platform to another platform. They can use messaging apps, they can threat people in the real life. And that's something that also we encourage a lot, and it's very good to see this kind of approach in the digital bill supported by you and Minister Barrot, in order to have like an additional step against the people, the cyber harasser, and to be sure that we're taking steps against them. But I'm still thinking that we need to be a bit more efficient, as I think that now what we need to find is the right way to be more efficient when it comes to how not only to remove content, but now to be sure that the people behind the content could be more or less warned, at least by the police or by the authority or by a regulator, to be sure that people are aware that they are watched and they will not continue to harass people online.
Thank you very much. And yes, it got stuck with me, like people being watched. But it's very important to kind of go beyond anonymity without taking away the positives of it. And I'm especially happy that beyond partnerships, which are important to build across the ecosystem, you went ahead to focus on partnership with civil society organizations and NGOs who can bring the context awareness and experience and expertise into content moderation, which have been often missing in content moderation, which is done on scale or by content moderators who are not experienced in this topic. And this really helps to go beyond the removal of content which which would be against the freedom of expression and CETA, because it's a context-aware, trusted flaggers who are deciding on the content. And we had a very nice policy introduction into the topic by the public sector and by the private sector, and we are moving into our third speaker now, who is standing somewhere in between these, trying to translate to the public sector what is the private doing, and especially to the private sector what is the public sector doing with the regulation. So Tremau is known for its work in promoting digital well-being and keeping users safe, and especially for helping regulation for smaller companies to navigate the framework to protect the users. So why are technology companies like Tremau well positioned to help to address digital violence and build online safety? And what are the solutions that you are offering? What are the multi-stakeholder solutions you see? And also maybe what are the solutions that you see in the future as you are moving ahead? What is maybe still needed to be addressed?
Thank you very much for the question. It's a wide question with many answers. I'll try to be brief. Merci, Madame la Ministre, pour votre intervention, and Benoit. The idea behind Tremau, behind the startup we launched about a bit less than 2 years ago, was actually the Christchurch call and the work we did when I was Chief of Staff at Henri Verdier and working on the call itself. Really the need for more transparency in the ecosystem and the need to moderate in the way the companies moderate the content, to make sure that there was more transparency, to fight one of the elements we discussed earlier around disinformation and around making sure that we can protect users online and that companies can protect users online while being transparent. And that is essential, I think, in the first place, not only to promote a trustworthy ecosystem, but also to better protect. Because when you're transparent, you can actually see which companies are and which companies are not doing what they should be, which is, I think, also part of the scheme and what Europe and through the leadership of France also pushed through the Digital Services Act. The other point we saw when we launched Tremau, and one of the reasons is big companies like Google, like Facebook, like TikTok actually is probably so some of the very big ones, but I'd also say a number of the big ones don't even have the means. It's very difficult to actually implement content moderation at scale. It's very, very complex. And if you look at some of the obligations that all the companies now need to meet with the Digital Services Act, it's going to be very difficult for a lot of these companies to be able to comply. And so what we've decided to build is to help companies by providing the best-in-class moderation solutions, not just centered on AI, but also centered on detecting behaviors, being able to remove faster and be more efficient in the way you moderate the content in a way that's more transparent. So that's the main solution we provide to the market and to the thousands of companies that don't have the billions that Meta or Google have, but that still need to do it. Because one of the things that we see, and I'm sure we see, and as you mentioned, is that bullying, cyber harassment, online sexual harms, they go cross platforms, and they usually, the tougher a company is going to be, the tougher Meta, the tougher Google is going to be, then it's going to go to the next layer, and then the next layer, and then the next layer. And so if we don't provide the tools to the companies to be able to moderate in a way that's efficient and cost-effective and compliant, they won't do it, and they'll just think that they can hide. And that's very important. Another point which you touched upon and you both mentioned is the work of trusted flaggers. We are also a big believer in the importance of trusted flaggers in the ecosystem, especially in a post-DSA world. In that end, we've worked with eEnfance. We actually built the tool eEnfance uses on a daily basis, and that enables them to react faster to elements or content that's been flagged or behaviors that have been flagged by users or by children or even by parents who are seeking help from people who are harassing their child or another child in school. So those are some of the ways which we've been helping civil society organizations, companies, and now we've also worked, and we're also starting to work with some of the largest companies in the world, helping them, because as you all know, under the Digital Services Act, there's an obligation for the VLOPs, for the very large online platforms, to do risk assessments. And that, again, is a very complex work, as Benoit would most probably be able to share, and that requires a lot of work. And so we've also been helping some of the largest companies prepare for this work. So that's, in a nutshell, what we do at Tremau, but I think you all highlighted the importance of the work that we do today in trying to make this ecosystem and the online world safer. As a personal level, I'm also a member of the We Protect Global Alliance, and they're going to issue a new report next week, which is, the numbers are just incredible. I think they say 80% of girls below 18, so between 11 and 18, have had some type of have faced some type of sexual online harms. And that number's around 75 in France, which is very, very, I mean, it's incredible. And so it just shows how much more we have to do to protect our children. I've got 3 small ones that don't have a smartphone yet, but just look at the work we have to do ahead.
Thank you very much. And we touch now upon promoting safe ecosystem, and also how important are trusted flaggers, because content moderation at scale is very difficult to do, and it's very difficult to do it in a balanced way and fairly, and in a way that contributes to the well-being of the society. And now, with our civil society representative, I would like to more balance our discussion towards, instead of regulation, what is the awareness which needs to support it, which needs to support the policy models which are being now implemented. And Finland has been recognized for its very strong focus on cybersecurity, education and awareness. So what can other countries learn from Finland's approach to educating young people about online safety? And can you share more about the context in which Cyber Citizen project is set? What is its concept? And also what are the innovative solutions that it's bringing to the society?
Thank you for the question. It's quite wide, but I'll try to do it in the time we have been given. Yes, good examples have been given by other panelists already, but I'll tell you a bit about Finland now. So in Finland, we are working to protect young people from digital violence in many fronts. It's important to raise awareness among the youth themselves about the rules and dangers of the digital world, and also about the ethical behavior in general and how to ask for help. On the other hand, it's important to raise parental awareness of the risks so that the parents know what might happen in the digital world. Young people may be more digitally literate than their parents, so parents may not even understand the dangers the young people might face. It's also really important to train those working with young people and authorities to recognize digital violence so that they can provide right kind of support and help, and to raise awareness among both parents and young people. Schools and teachers, for example, are important channels for raising both young people's own and parents' awareness. And this work in Finland involves public actors, such as various ministries, and at a practical level, the police, schools, social services, and also NGOs. For example, this Riku Victim Support Finland, which has lots of activities helping to protect youth from digital violence. But about our initiative, so basically I'm working on this Europe-wide EU-funded Cyber Citizen initiative. And our aim is to develop civic skills in cybersecurity, and the kind of a bigger goal is to make digital environment safer for all citizens. In the first phase of our initiative, we studied the current teaching methods, views and materials of cyber citizen skills education and training in all European Union member states. And based on the research, we defined civic skills in cybersecurity, or as we call them, cyber citizen skills. And these skills are perceived not just as everyday skills, but also as enablers for individuals and also organizations and societies in an increasingly digital Europe. And the role of cyber citizen skills is positioning the European Union in the global technology race is also no less significant. We concluded that every citizen, both young people and their parents, basically everyone, should have certain basic skills to be able to act safely and also to protect both themselves and their loved ones in the digital world. So the skills we defined are firstly critical thinking, so that basically you understand what's going on in the digital world and you cannot trust everything what's going on, all the deepfakes, everything that's happening currently. And the second one is, of course, understanding the basic principles of technologies, how to use those devices in a secure manner. And thirdly, understanding the norms and rules of digital world. It's like in traffic, you have to understand how others might act so that you yourself might act in a secure manner. And the fourth skill set is having the ability to understand what is valuable to each party in each situation. So you might not get anything free from the digital world. You always pay with something. It might not be money, but something else. And lastly, recognizing own biases and recognizing the impact of feelings and emotions in different situations. So this is something we think would be good that every European citizen would know how to do or would understand these skills and would have these skill sets so that they could function in the digital world in a secure manner. And at the heart of our Cyber Citizen initiative is the creation of this Cyber Citizen Skills Learning Model and learning portal accessible to all Europeans. And this portal is designed to contain content targeted to all citizens, different ages, young people, older people, and people with disabilities. And in line with the objective of enhancing cybersecurity competence, both of an individual level and more widely in society, we are also building European-wide cooperation with those working with developing cyber citizen skills. So that was shortly what we are doing now, and maybe we can discuss a bit more about this later on.
Thank you very much, and thank you for putting emphasis on empowering citizens, because we often, when we are discussing this topic, we often think about fighting the bad guys, fighting those perpetrators online. But there are also many massive majority of the society, of people, parents and kids online who want to create safer environment, but sometimes don't have the necessary information, don't have the necessary awareness about the topic, especially when it comes to the role of parents. And in the previous round, we touched upon the role of parents and caregivers in preventing and addressing digital violence, and also what is their role toward ensuring more online safety? What are some policy recommendations, etc. But when it comes to resources and guidance which is coming from the public institutions, how is it in a country such as France, which is a leader in the child protection online? What can the country teach others about awareness online toward parents? And what are some of the models you're implementing, and where do you see gaps for the future to be addressed? So the regulation is actually supported by empowered citizens and informed citizens.
Comme je l'ai dit, on est au-delà du combat, il faut qu'on intègre entièrement la présence numérique dans la vie depuis presque tout petit, puisque vous avez dit que la question se posait déjà pour les enfants. Dès tout petit, la question de la place de l'écran se pose. Moi, on m'a évoqué déjà des parents qui, à la place du mobile, au-dessus du bébé, du nourrisson, mettre des téléphones avec des activités du téléphone. Donc le rapport à l'écran, c'est déjà quelque chose d'important qu'il faut dès le début, et on porte, nous, sur ce sujet, une attention particulière. Après, je vous rejoins, il ne faut certainement pas interdire, y compris chez les plus jeunes, le numérique. Il faut informer sur la chance du numérique, les possibilités du numérique et sur les risques, et vraiment inviter les familles, les éducateurs et l'environnement de l'enfant à être prudents, comme dans la vraie vie, à voir évoluer l'enfant en fonction de ses capacités et à l'accompagner, et à toujours l'accompagner, même quand il est plus grand. Mais j'allais dire, c'est comme dans la vraie vie. Alors, la difficulté, c'est, j'allais dire, le décalage des générations. C'est-à-dire qu'aujourd'hui, ce sera peut-être toujours comme ça, on a une génération de parents qui, en partie encore, ne vit pas le numérique comme les enfants, qui n'utilise le numérique un peu comme outil, mais qui n'a pas ça dans sa vie au quotidien. C'est une petite partie. On a des parents qui ont appris le numérique, pas quand ils ont été enfants, et qui s'en servent à titre professionnel, personnel. Voilà. Il faut arriver à changer la programmation des parents pour se rendre compte qu'aujourd'hui, ce numérique est tout le temps présent. Présent, y compris chez les adultes. Je le dis souvent, les papas, les mamans, quand ils partent le matin à l'école, ils ont le téléphone dans la main, ils envoient un SMS au patron, un SMS à la grand-mère, ils font la commande de nourriture, ils prennent une réservation sur Doctolib ou sur le train, et puis ils regardent les nouvelles, et voilà. Donc, c'est très présent. Et ça, on est les meilleurs modèles de nos enfants. Et donc, il faut vraiment, je pense, changer d'approche. Il faut bien sûr être très, très, très ferme sur les règles, sur la protection à des contenus illégaux, sur les tranches d'âge, comme on l'a fait d'ailleurs avec la télévision. Mais il faut aussi avoir une notion de vraiment accompagnement au quotidien et de se dire que c'est comme la santé, c'est comme l'éducation, c'est dans nos vies. Donc c'est un modèle complet, en tout cas, qu'il faut approcher. Et c'est comme ça qu'on arrivera à responsabiliser tout le monde, les enfants eux-mêmes. Parce qu'on le voit bien, il faut aussi responsabiliser les enfants. C'est pas possible autrement. Je dirais, voilà, ils sont pas dans un espace d'impunité. Alors, quand je dis qu'on fait ça collectivement, j'ai oublié de dire tout à l'heure, enfin, j'ai un peu dit qu'on s'appuyait aussi beaucoup sur les entreprises et les associations, et sur les initiatives des associations. L'État ne peut pas être... L'État, la Commission européenne, enfin, bien sûr, est là pour poser un cadre, pour fixer les valeurs. Vous avez évoqué tout à l'heure le conflit de valeurs qu'on peut avoir parfois entre les données personnelles et la protection des données des adultes et la protection des enfants. Ça ne vous étonnera pas, je considère que la protection des enfants doit être prioritaire à la protection des données des enfants. On a ce sujet-là, par exemple, sur qu'est-ce que nous allons faire du futur règlement européen sur les abus sexuels en ligne. Faut-il aller plus loin que ce que nous avions, c'est-à-dire arriver à du retrait de contenu sur les plateformes? Faut-il aller dans les messageries cryptées? Je ne vous cache pas que je pousse en tout cas pour que les contraintes technologiques et la protection des données des adultes ne soient pas le seul élément pris en compte. Il faut considérer la protection des enfants. Voilà, globalement, sur ma réponse sur le projet global. Et voilà. Et je voulais dire aussi qu'effectivement, c'est par exemple l'initiative de l'association e-enfance dont on a parlé, qui a créé cette plateforme du 3018, qui est un interlocuteur aujourd'hui reconnu, ce qu'on appelle un signaleur de confiance. On y allait tout doucement. Elle s'est installée dans le paysage et au fur et à mesure, l'ensemble des acteurs du numérique sont venus en confiance, sous votre contrôle, travailler avec e-enfance. Les enfants sont confiants, les enfants, les jeunes, et parfois les adultes qui ont encore une âme d'enfant, viennent au téléphone avec e-enfance dire voilà, j'ai un problème, j'ai une image qui se balade, etc. E-enfance a été à la fois extrêmement à la hauteur technologiquement, mais aussi à installer un climat de confiance entre l'ensemble des opérateurs, je dois pouvoir le dire, et ça c'est une force. Il faut avancer fermement, fortement dans nos valeurs, toutes nos valeurs, et pas simplement la liberté d'expression ou la protection des données des adultes, et en confiance, en n'inquiétant pas outre mesure et en ne diabolisant pas, mais en étant très clair sur tous les risques. Voilà. Je ne sais pas si je suis claire et je réponds tout à fait à la question.
Thank you very much. You are very clear in answering, and I especially like the climate of trust, which should be a motto for digital ecosystem in general, because this is about creating trust between different actors, creating trust between different layers of governance and implementation. And I especially like, and I would like to highlight the point of different layers of responsibility, the state responsibility, the corporate sector responsibility, and the personal responsibility of parents, because it shouldn't be a discussion about what can everyone else do but the parents and the kids themselves, but it should be a discussion about what can everyone do about it, and parents are the role models and are showing the example for using the devices and exposure to the devices, which our children picking up. So their kind of example is a very formative experience since early childhood. And before we were, you were also mentioning the protection of data of children, and I just wanted to jump in and ask a private company about how do you see protection of data? What are the challenges between distinguishing protection of data of your adult users and youth users? What are maybe the limitations of from the technical point of sight as a private company which is moderating the content, and also if you can touch upon the new technologies, because the content is being now generated at scale, and it's going to be a trend which only grows in importance and impact. But as tools such generative AI and SATA can improve the creation of or just like multiple the creation of content, whether for better or worse, it can also help to find solutions for this kind of content and create a safer environment. So how can these solutions contribute to privacy of the users and safety of the users at the same time?
No, they're only a good question. So perhaps to start with the balance and how to strike the balance between the data of kids and the need also like to put in place different tools. So it's something that we are, I would say, like we are facing on a daily basis. The first point is that the data of the kids should be more protected, meaning that we should take extra milestone when it comes to data protection when it comes to kids. For example, is something that we are doing on YouTube, which is our video platform. Of course, if a kid, like could be a teenager, is watching like a content on YouTube, we will not use its data to do like personalized ads. We decided to block this kind of personalized ads when it comes to kids, because we should not use data from kids for like commercial purposes and so on and so on. So I think that the first point, the first answer to your question is, we need to first put in place some safeguards when it comes to the use of content and mostly data regarding to kids. The second point is something that we are experiencing on a daily basis, meaning that someone is going like on search, on Google search, on YouTube, is starting to make like some queries. We don't know if it's an adult or not. So we don't know which kind of content we should expose to the person. So what we decided to develop, and it's something that France is also thinking about, is trying to understand how we can create a model in terms of age inference, meaning that based on the queries, based on the behavior of the person, we can be able to, I would say, like to have a suspicion of someone being a minor. If you are watching like only content for kids on YouTube, and you do not have like an account flag as a kid one, of course, at one point the platform will say, we have a suspicion that you are a kid. So can you pass through like several verification system? And at one point we will ask the person to justify about being like a minor or more likely to be an adult. And if he's not able to justify that he's an adult, we will consider that the person is a minor, and we will push the user into this kind of minor environment, meaning like YouTube keys, safe search activated by default on Google search, and so on and so on. And that's the kind of approach that's so interesting. Of course, it's striking like a balance, because it means that we need to have a high-level analysis of what is happening on the platform, so to use data, but from the use of the platform and from the analysis of this kind of data, we could have a tool that could permit to identify if we are in front of us a kid or an adult. And it should be like part of this kind of solutions that are in line with the current trends that we see in France, to be more in favor of, we need to be sure that the right people will get access to the right services and to the right content. More or less that's the goal, meaning that our goal is to be sure that we will not expose minors to content that are not designed for minors, and we need to be sure to take the several milestones needed to be sure that it will not happen. So that's something very, very key for us. And when it comes to the new technology, and you talked about generative AI, clearly artificial intelligence and of course generative AI are part of the most fantastic, tremendous technology right now. Clearly, we will have in front of you months, years of new applications, new way to interact with machine, and so on and so on. When it comes to child protection and the key issue, of course, and we need to be conscious of that, meaning that we are on our side, we're not living in this kind of dream, meaning that we decided to have a responsible approach, meaning that we decided not to launch the product at a global scale without any kind of safeguards, testing, and so on and so on. And it's clear that we know that those technology will be used in a bad way. And we need to be prepared for that. We need to be sure to put in place some safeguards. We need to be sure that our trust and safety team, our moderation team, and so on, are fully equipped before to have such kind of use of content. Because, of course, we talked about child porn. Generative AI is able to generate child porn. And, of course, how you are dealing with this kind of fake child porn? In France, we are lucky because the penal code permits to capture such kind of content, because we are not asking to have the picture using real people. But for example, in other countries, not necessarily the case. So perhaps some things that we need to think, for example, at the European level, to be sure that we're capturing the full kind of child porn activities that now we will be able to see. Of course, we can imagine to have some exposure of private data of minors, and so on and so on. So that's why right now what we see with this kind of new technology, it means that I mute. Clearly there is a responsibility from the several first technology provider to users to be sure that those technology will be used in the right way. Again, meaning that labeling content created by such kind of generative AI should be part of this kind of ID, and so on and so on. So I think we are just at the early stage of the broad use of this kind of content, and it's time for governments, for companies, for NGOs, for everyone to sit all together to think through what could be the misuse. Are we ready? Do we have the tool? Do we have the legal answers? And so on and so on. And likely perhaps to start to fix some of the issues that we could anticipate now. And on a going basis, clearly we will see new, I would say, unintended consequences of generative AI, and we need to be sure that we can capture this kind of stuff.
Thank you very much, and thank you for pointing to the fact that technology is dual use, and while we need to support the digital transition, we also need to protect the users and the different experiences in in online environment, and there was a lot of discussion also around metaverse, like what happens in metaverse. Is this constituting, the breach of law which it would constitute in real world? Because in the first round we already mentioned the importance of like how online violence translate offline. How these experiences, they don't stay online. They can traumatize people. They can hurt people. There can be physical harm to people, which impacts minors and youth. And so these topics are very complex. And when I was researching about the Tremau company, what really struck me was that it pays tribute to the French engineer Tremau, the inventor of Tremau algorithm, which introduces the way how to find a clear path from any maze. And I was very inspired by the message, because all the digital solutions are very complex. This is what makes them very puzzling, very hard to balance. What is negative, proportionate, or disproportionate response to them. But we already discuss content moderation. We can also touch upon ensuring safety by design in the product. But when we continue the line from new technologies, especially artificial intelligence, what do you see as your company is the maze which is being created, and how to find way out of it in regulatory and practical ways for the companies?
Thank you. I think one of the most important answers is innovation. We need to continue to innovate. Why? I mean, to Benoit's point, the new generative models or language models that have come out are incredible. They are going to generate enormous new use cases that are going to change the way we live and the way we work in numerous ways. But we also know they're going to be used by bad actors. And so we need to be better and faster than the bad actors to be able to detect and identify the threats before they can scale. That's part of what we do in our research and development team. It's part of what, I mean, I'm sure that Google does every day as well, and some of the largest companies also do. Last week we were in Dublin and we were speaking to one of the biggest dating sites. And they were seeing already how LLM models were being used by bad actors to create hundreds of different accounts and have hundreds of different conversations, and then start asking questions and private informations about many different users in a way that seemed very real life. That's one way. There's a big discussion right now happening also, how could these large language models be used to provide even more targeted ads and provide ads at scale, especially when you look at 2024 and the number of elections that will happen next year. We think that there's clearly an issue or clearly a problem around how will these models be used for this information. And innovation is key, because we need to find ways to be better at detecting these types of threats. It's detecting the content itself. There is, of course, the answer, Benoit, of saying, how can we label the content? How can we make sure we've pre-labeled it so it's easier to identify? But there's also many other ways to be able to try identify. How can we find intelligent means when you start studying the behavior of a user on your platform? This user is posting that type of content. Well, he says he's German, but he's posting content in French, and his IP address is in Russia, and the credit card users in China, right? This is a very simple way, but there's many other ways of being able to detect users that are abusing your platform and using these new technologies to create harm and to harm the users. Yeah, maybe just to conclude, because this is one of the points you mentioned before, and it's also one way we will fight against these abusive use of technology, of innovation, is also by empowering citizens. And empowering, going back to the We Protect Global Alliance report that's going to come out, they said that less than 10% of the children that had online harms actually reported the content. What they would do is they just block the user, or they don't report it. And reporting, if you think that only 10% just reported to the platform, what about going to an e-enfance, going to another, going to see an adult? A platform if the content is on the platform, it's probably already passed all the filterings, all the AI system and classifiers of a platform. And so if you don't notify it, if you don't, and by the way, companies under the DSA will have the legal obligations of reviewing that report. So then it becomes a very powerful tool. And if we need to explain to the youth, but also to the parents and to everyone that they have the power to try and make the platform safer as well, but they need to actually use those mechanisms. Thank you.
Thank you very much for a message supporting empowering citizens and how important is it to use the existing mechanisms. And it goes back to the awareness about not only regulation, but about the tools which are there for people and which are not being used and utilized to its fullest. And before my last question, I just wanted to check with the audience whether there are any questions from the audience, because we promised to give you time. Oh, so we do have some. Please go ahead. Feel free to say whether it's addressed to the panel as a whole, or whether you want to address specific speaker at the panel.
Okay. Shall I speak in French or in English? Ok, je vais peut-être parler en français. David Pargamin, je suis journaliste au magazine Challenge. Ma question s'adresse à Madame la Ministre. Vous avez évoqué la loi sur la majorité numérique qui est donc en cours d'examen par le Conseil d'État. L'une des questions qui se pose sera de savoir comment vérifier l'âge des utilisateurs pour les plateformes concernées. Quelle est la solution technique qui risque ou qui a le plus de chances d'être adoptée?
Pardon, d'abord une précision, cette loi sur la majorité numérique, c'est une proposition de loi qui est en cours de discussion et qui arrive devant le Sénat, donc avant, voilà. En fait, sur le sujet, que ce soit pour l'accès au porno, que ce soit pour la vérification d'âge par rapport aux différentes règles que nous posons, et même les règles d'ailleurs que s'imposent les plateformes. Aujourd'hui, les plateformes, ils ont toutes 13 ans, pas de contrat. Je sais qu'il y a de la modération, on essaye de repérer les moins de 13 ans, mais quelque part, ce mécanisme de vérification d'âge, il est évidemment indispensable pour tout le monde. Voilà. Alors, moi, je l'ai toujours dit, je suis ministre de l'Enfance, l'État a beaucoup de compétences, l'État est là aussi pour développer un certain nombre de propositions, mais je pense que l'État n'est pas là pour fixer précisément les outils de vérification d'âge. Soyons très clairs, il y a beaucoup de choses déjà qui existent, hein. D'autres sont en cours de développement. Meta travaille avec Yoti. On a, nous, une solution qui est en train d'être développée au niveau de l'État qui s'appelle Pérenne. Chaque opérateur doit se saisir de ce qui est le plus adapté à lui et de le plus adapté à sa, entre guillemets, clientèle, à charge pour les autorités de régulation de vérifier si le dispositif est adapté, proportionné, efficace. Voilà. Il existe déjà des choses pour reconnaître l'âge. Il en faut peut-être des plus efficaces. On peut compter sur l'intelligence de l'ensemble des opérateurs. Je ne pense pas que ça soit à l'État ni aux institutions européennes de fixer précisément le dispositif, parce que d'abord, il sera dépassé 36 heures après. Il sera contourné 47 heures après par des gens bien plus malicieux et parfois malveillants. Donc voilà. Donc, il existe déjà des choses. Et je crois qu'il faut aussi bien évidemment être exigeant avec l'ensemble des opérateurs, demander à ce qu'ils y mettent les moyens d'intelligence et les moyens financiers, mais il faut aussi être attentif à ce qu'il n'existe pas un risque zéro, et donc ça ne sera jamais la solution 100% sécurisante pour nos enfants, de la même manière qu'il y a plein de choses qui ne les sécurisent pas dans la vie, le passage piéton, tout ça, c'est bien, mais c'est pas suffisant. Il faut de l'éducation, de la sensibilisation et de l'accompagnement de tout le monde, en particulier des parents, qui aujourd'hui, à 30%, ne savent pas quoi faire avec le téléphone de leurs enfants. Voilà. Donc on est là pour donner. Et simplifier, énormément simplifier les process, simplifier les contrôles parentaux, faire en sorte que ça soit, on n'ait pas besoin de faire Polytechnique pour avoir un contrôle parental et tout. Mais c'est vraiment quelque chose de plus collectif que ça. Voilà, j'espère avoir répondu à votre question.
Pardon, je complète juste, je rebondis. Effectivement, il y a beaucoup de solutions. Il y en a qui sont un peu plus gourmandes en données personnelles. Les solutions de reconnaissance faciale, par exemple, traitent des données sensibles. Est-ce qu'on peut demander à la fois aux plateformes de respecter le RGPD et de faire des solutions de ce genre?
C'est pour ça que ce que prévoit le projet de loi, c'est de faire en sorte que le référentiel, qui n'ira pas dans les détails technologiques, parce que ce n'est pas le métier des autorités de régulation, donne un certain cadre en disant les lignes rouges en matière de RGPD, c'est la CNIL qui fait ça, et l'ARCOM sur d'autres dispositifs. Mais bon, je veux dire, il y a un moment où il faut aussi faire tomber un certain nombre de choses. Sauf erreur de ma part, tous les jours, j'utilise ma reconnaissance faciale pour entrer dans mon téléphone. J'ose espérer que ça n'a pas des conséquences démesurées sur mes données et que tout ça, voilà. Il y a bien sûr à être très vigilant, et la CNIL le saura. On a la chance d'avoir une autorité de régulation assez ancienne et qui pratique les choses depuis longtemps et qui est effectivement très au fait de tout ça. À nouveau, il va falloir ne pas se cacher derrière son petit doigt et avoir bien conscience qu'aujourd'hui, je mets mon visage pratiquement sur tout, y compris pour accéder à mon compte bancaire. Hein. Mon visage à moi, je le dis à tout le monde, vos visages à vous ne marchent pas pour mon compte bancaire.
Are there any further questions from the audience?
Yes.
Sisa? Okay. Please go
Yann
ahead.
Bouin from Idacto. We work on ID solutions and we work on proof of age solutions. But that won't solve everything. So as a parent, I'm going to ask a question to Google because they're on stage. But today I have a major issue, as the minister just said, with parental controls. They're all... Everybody's jumping into the bandwagon and proposing parental control solutions, and everyone is using this as a lock-in solution to lock you into the Google environment. You have to have an Android phone to use, or a Chromebook to use the Google solution. You have to have an iPhone to use the Apple solution. And in the end, the controlling app requires very little information from the client app. Why are the GAFAMs not working on a unified solution so that from my Android phone, I can control my son's iPhone or his MacBook and vice versa?
And it will be the last question, please, because then we have agendas. This is, I guess, for Benoit Tabaka.
Thanks a lot. Many things on your point in terms of like interoperability and working on a broad solution. So the first one is clearly on Google we develop like Family Link working on different devices. Apple has its own solutions. There is different solution working both on Android and Apple. Just to mention for us, Family Link is working on Apple. So we're pretty proud that now when you are using like Family Link, you can. For example, you are at home, you are using Android phones, you have people using Apple phones and so on, and you can have like the parent on its Android phone being able to manage which kind of content like a kid could have an access on the iOS phone and so on, and that's the goal of this kind of feature. But it's clear that in terms of working like broadly on a joint solution, on a unique solution, I think that we see first, it's part of the other issues that we have, and that is not part of the DSS, part of the DMA, but there is like a broader issue in terms of interoperability between the two ecosystems, Android on one side, iOS on the other side, and it's clear that the goal of the DMA is to be sure that we can ensure a smooth interoperability between the two ecosystems. So clearly, I think that in the next years we will see like better tools working across the platform, and it's good stuff. Think about your messaging app. That's the best example. You would love to use your messaging app on iOS and be sure that you can could be interconnected with the other messaging apps. So that's more or less one of the key things on the pipeline. And the second point is we need to think like about a multi-layer approach when it comes to parental control. of course, we can use, as Google, some parental control. And of course, we need to have other actors offering like parental controls with a different approach, with different tools. Perhaps today we have a tool for MediLink is more like an app, and perhaps tomorrow, and for example, with the law on the age verification, we could have like parental control within the app, meaning that some things that we could be built by the app developer within the app developer, like with an API and so on and so on. So I think that as far as today, and specifically with the rise of intelligence artificial and all this kind of new technology, I think that we need not only to have like a single solution coming from a group of company, but more to open the different solution, because it's clear that we need to be sure that at the end, first, parents will be comfortable to use the best tools that suits with how they want to use this kind of tool, and two, to be sure that we are not blocked into like a single technical solution, but more as the opposite, that to open the field and to be sure that we can have like different approach, different solution, and specifically on the long term to be sure that we can tackle new usage, new tools, new way to communicate, and so on and so on. And that's more or less like the way where we are designing our product, and that's the way we are thinking. And specifically, back to your point, Madame la Ministre, on the edge verification, there will not be like a single one way to make edge verification, and we need to be sure that we have all the tools offered in front of us, because likely edge verification today will be totally different in the next months, in the next years, and so on. And then we need to be sure that technology will evolve smoothly. Just to make a comparison, because we are talking a lot about cyber, look, all the discussion we had about password over like the last 10, 15 years, and we moved to a mechanism with like the classical password, then we have a key, and now we are moving it to a world without password. And that's the new way, meaning that today we are moving like in a new world where we will remove password and we will have a different way of authentication, and because technology permits, and perhaps tomorrow will be the case with edge verification too.
Thank you very much. And is there anything you want to add? As we are running late, we'll be wrapping up the panel. I will not be concluding with any remarks. I will not attempt for them with this time frame, as we need to wrap up. But I want to thank our amazing speakers, first and foremost, for finding time today and answering all the questions, whether from the audience or from me, and wishing all of you a very nice time at the Paris Cyber Summit. And day 2 is tomorrow, so let's go. Thank you.